What is one thing your significant other hid from you until later in the relationship? My now husband acted like he knew how to grill steaks and just casually grabbed steaks and asked me how I liked mine, and then made perfect steaks. Then continued making perfect steaks for months, then years. And I just learned a month or so ago that the first time he made steaks for me was the first time he'd made steaks in his life. He just studied up intensely because he felt that I would be impressed by him making me a good steak. I thought he had been making steaks for years to throw down a perfect steak like it was no big thing, but it turned out he did a ton of research and was sweating bullets trying to get it right. He's the best. Kind of relevant story, I brought a girl over for a dinner date and cooked a steak that had been in my fridge for like 4 days. It was about to turn, but it was fine. I work in a meat shop and it was cut fresh when I got it, but I was kind of worried. The steak turned out fine, she loved it, nothing happened that night. The next morning I drive her to work and I had to stop to let her throw up like twice. I felt horrible. Turns out she was pregnant with someone else's kid, the last steak she ever got from me. He didn't really hide it, but I never knew the story of how his first wife passed away until we were engaged. I only knew that she had CF and that she died too soon. I didn't know that he came home from work, found her passed out and blue, and rushed her to the hospital himself, where she later died. He told me about it one evening when we were sitting in front of the Christmas tree. The whole story came pouring out of him, and I just hugged him and listened. His mother died 6 months after his first wife passed away, and to hear him tell it, it nearly broke him. I think it healed his heart a little to talk about it, and I know that it made me love him even more somehow. I'm just grateful that he was willing to open his heart up to love again. He is an awesome man, and the best thing that has ever happened to me. I'm sorry for your loss. Sending you internet hugs. His eldest daughter. I learned about her 3 months into our relationship. I had known about his younger daughter, different mothers, from the start. He was very open about that. However, he didn't know how to tell me about his eldest because it was going to be a difficult conversation. The mother of his eldest had taken off with her years ago, and he had no idea how to find her. Within a year of our dating, we found her. It was very rough at first because she had been brought up being told that her father didn't care about her. Typical parental alienation. Within the next 5 years, her father and I got married and she opted to live with us. Now she is an adult living her life on her terms, and we are incredibly proud of her. That's a feel-good story. He actually bought his favorite sweatshirt from Walmart. At first, he told me Costco because he thought it made him sound a little classier. The funny thing is, it sort of does. I mean, you have to be a Costco member. It shows commitment to being part of an elite institution as well as the responsibility to finish 10 kilograms of Ruffles and 7-layer dip. Not to mention perseverance when finding parking at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. A man who buys their favorite shirt from Costco is a man who can deal with my crap. My girlfriend swoops her hair over her left eye. I thought it was just an emo hairstyle until I found out she was blind in one eye. One of my exes waited months to tell me that her godparents, that she lived with, were actually her ex-boyfriend's parents. I actually didn't mind it until he moved back in. There should almost always be full disclosure, but this is a lie by omission I can understand. That is such a weird situation that sounds like a cheap way to cheat with an ex. That's gotta be a giant crap sandwich of a situation romantically. This mindset is why everyone assumed I was cheating with my ex. But the reality was I didn't want to be homeless. It was crappy to be in a position like that and have everyone judge you for something that you weren't even doing. My girlfriend, now wife, and I had been living together for 2 years before I told her I watched Star Trek. I was worried she would think I was too nerdy. It was the early 90s, I had a VCR at my parents' house and I would have dinner with them once a week, and then watch the latest episode of The Next Generation. It all came out one week when my girlfriend and I were both over for dinner. We were getting ready to leave when my mom says, "Aren't you going to watch Star Trek first?" It was all out in the open. My girlfriend immediately felt bad for me, saying she would never even have judged me for watching Trek. She even watched a few episodes with me that I had on VHS at my parents' home. She liked it and thought the stories and themes were good. Trying to assuage my fears further, a few months later she surprised me with tickets for both of us to a Star Trek convention that was coming to town, so we went. After about 30 minutes of walking around the con, seeing autograph booths, vendors, and cosplayers, she leaned into me and whispered lovingly in my ear, "You were right not to tell me." This one is my favorite. Her response is spot on. I just found out that he's scared of snails and slugs after almost 13 years of marriage. Not me, but my parents. My mom told me a few years ago that on their first date, they went out for pizza. My mom's favorite is ham and pineapple, and my dad says, "Great, I love pineapple on pizza." Fast forward years and years of my dad eating ham and pineapple, and he finally confesses that he hates it. He actually ate crappy-ass pizza for 20 years instead of just admitting that he hates it. This was one of her life lessons for me when I started dating. This is sort of adorable, that he would lie all that time to share a similarity. I mean, he shouldn't have, but still, it's kinda cute. For something this harmless, I think it's kind of cute. He didn't want to tell her that she couldn't get her favorite kind. It's pretty funny that it continued for decades, though. My SO didn't reveal until much later that a sizable inheritance came with the relationship. It was a wonderful surprise, especially because we were secure financially without it. This is one of those times that it makes complete sense to hide something from an SO, at least for a little while. Even if someone isn't a gold digger from the start, a looming inheritance can certainly change people. That he hates sheets. About 4 years into the relationship, he proclaimed that sheets wrap around him when he sleeps, and he refuses to use them anymore. Apparently, he's always hated sheets, but just never mentioned it. Like the fitted sheets or flat sheets. I absolutely refuse to sleep with a flat sheet. The flat sheet. He doesn't care about the fitted sheet, but he rolls around a lot when he sleeps, so the flat sheet wraps around him. My friend is dating a farmer. No, they didn't meet on farmersonly.com. They did meet online, though. Anywho, they've been dating for 5 months at this time, and he refuses to take her to his town and meet his family because he's had a lot of girls date him for what he owns. She waited a year and had no problems, and he finally brought her to his town and house. His family is a multi-millionaire family. They own like 15 farms across the US. Their house is a mansion. She was super scared to be in a relationship after that. They're still dating, but she tries to buy her own things and not depend on him and his money. He can sing beautifully. We had been together for 2 years before I heard him actually sing. He would belt out random lyrics in the car with me in a fun, playful, not serious way all the time. The first time I heard him actually feel it, I was blown away. He has such a deep, soulful voice. He could do magic tricks. We were together for 13 years, and one day he pulls out a deck of cards and says, "Pick a card, any card." Fricker got my card and everything, just as smooth as can be. Never did it again. My husband, after we were married, dated 3 years, busts out and turns a restaurant napkin into an origami crane. This guy is not suave at all, typical awkward engineer. I am completely baffled as to why he didn't try to impress me with this at the beginning. Engineer here. Origami with bar napkins is my go-to on first dates. Works wonders. Origami bouquets as presents are also very cheap and a stronger aphrodisiac than almost anything known to man, apparently. Well, I'm the one that hid something from her, that I was a smoker. I got to a point where I'd hidden it that long that to admit it would be pretty much lying by omission, and I really liked her. And that's the story of how I quit smoking. You can hide a lot of things. Actively smoking cigs is not one of them. Chew, on the other hand, my point is that they knew and didn't care. Yep, not sure how people actually believe that they can hide smoking. It's extremely pungent. That she liked the person I could become, not the one I was. Ouch. I know that feeling. Ironically, I find myself becoming more and more like the person she wishes I could be after we broke up, partly because that's the person I want to be, and I could have never gotten this far if I hadn't broken up with her. I had a very similar experience. So much of my problem was a lack of self-esteem, and a lack of confidence to pursue my goals, much of which came from constantly trying to earn the respect of someone who had no respect to give me. Cutting her out of my life was the most freeing decision I've ever made. Without her, there is no voice in the back of my mind telling me the things I want are stupid, my accomplishments aren't good enough, my very personality is wrong and pointless. I've started living for myself and ironically ended up with all the things she used to shame me for not having, because it turned out doing something because you want to is a lot more fulfilling than doing something because someone else's approval depends on it. I don't know if she hid it or just didn't discuss it, but I didn't learn of her massive student loan debt until we were engaged. I think people don't really discuss finances as well as they should. It is a touchy subject, especially if you have a lot of debt in the first place. Absolutely. Finances need to be openly discussed before moving in together and definitely before or upon getting engaged. It's an uncomfortable but important convo to have. My ex-girlfriend hid the fact that she was on bipolar medication before we moved in together in North Carolina after moving from New York. She then stopped taking her medication and then quit her job. leaving me as the sole income for the two of us. I was 23 years old, and this was my first long-term relationship. We broke up a month after she quit her job. That was a very long month. Why did she stop taking her meds? I feel so much better. Everything's working out well. I must not need the meds anymore. Or at least that was my ex's thought process. I've been with my girlfriend for 3 years, and she still won't tell me why she can't listen to Jimmy Eat World. The Middle was probably her song that she shared with an ex. Friday I'm in Love, for me. Neither of us like The Cure anymore. It took me 4 years to tell my now wife that I do not like my sandwiches cut in half. She still brings it up. My uncle hid a walnut allergy from his ex-girlfriend many years ago. She found out when he had to be hospitalized after he ate some walnut brownies that she made for him. He knew about the walnuts. He just wanted to be nice. But why? Is the conversation at the hospital better than the conversation at home? When I was in college, I had no money and had shaggy hair, so I was wandering around the dorms looking for someone who knew how to cut hair. A cute girl overheard me and said, "Hey, I know how to cut hair." She gave me a haircut in the hallway and then asked if I wanted to go to Steak and Shake. I said sure. It's been 13 years, we're married, and she still gives me haircuts. About 2 years into the relationship, she confessed that she had no idea how to cut hair, but really wanted an excuse to hang out with me. She did it in the hallway and asked me to Steak and Shake because she didn't want me to look in a mirror and see the results. She's actually pretty good at it now, though. That is a pretty funny and unique start to your relationship. May the best of luck be with you guys. So, when I was younger, my group of friends had this tradition of messing with people who passed out. Drawing on them, stacking things on them, etc. Anyway, one night I noticed there were a lot of people who passed out, so I started bingo daubing everyone on the forehead. Then I realized I was the only one awake. Not only that, but I had bingo daubed the forehead of a girl I really liked. I didn't want her to get mad at me for bingo daubing her forehead, so I concluded in my wasted stupor that I had no other choice than to bingo daub myself. So I did. Years went by, and it was always a mystery who bingo daubed everyone. The girl I liked at that party had been my girlfriend for several years now, and I finally decided to come clean. She thought it was hilarious. But let me tell you, that ink they use in those bingo daubers is really hard to clean off your forehead. I was so confused. I thought bingo daubing was what you called teabagging. I was impressed that you could do that to yourself. Smart. I found out that my significant other hides candy from me in her car. In fairness, she does this because she likes the occasional sweet, whereas I attack a bag of gummy bears like a starved hyena. I bought Girl Scout cookies and left them in my car. It'll take me weeks to eat them, if I even finish them. Whereas if I bring them inside, they'll be gone in a day. There's also a chocolate bar behind the broccoli in the fridge. He brought me to a house party just a couple of weeks after we started dating. He pointed out a young lady, and he said that he'd been dating her before me. What he didn't mention was that he failed to tell her that the relationship was over. No wonder she was giving me the stink eye all night. I'm also 99% sure he was seeing someone else before we decided to get divorced, since he was spending all his time at the place his new girlfriend worked. Furthermore, I'm 99% sure he met someone else before they broke up, several years later, based on how they met and when they started dating. There's a pattern here. The pattern is that my ex is a crappy relationship partner who exits a relationship, finds someone else, and only then does his partner know he's finished. Like a monkey swinging on tree branches, you've got to get a firm hold on the next one before you let go of the last one. Your analogy is the best ever. Personally, I was the opposite of my SO. I laid it all out on the table right away. History of eating disorder, now recovered, depression, anxiety, self-harm, abusive childhood, etc. Because I wanted him to know what he was getting himself into. I was his first everything, and I sensed such a sweet innocence in him, it didn't seem fair to have him get emotionally invested in me and then feel trapped with a crazy chick due to guilt. I gave him every opportunity to bail, and would not have blamed him one bit for running away. I was past a lot of my issues, but I still had quite a bit of emotional baggage when we met that I was still working on. Instead of scaring him off, he actually respected my honesty and fell for me harder. Now we're married and expecting our first kid. Funny how things work out. I wish my ex was like you. She put everything out there eventually but refused to believe in the relationship or that I loved her. Kept thinking she was too broken for any of that. Ended up distancing herself and breaking it off. Not sure why I'm saying any of this or what it has to do with you, just felt like getting it off my chest. I guess just trust me that when he says he loves you, regardless of what you think, he means it. That kind of attitude is understandable. I kept asking him if he was only with me to try to fix me. Partially, I felt like I didn't deserve such a nice guy, and he emphatically assured me that was not his intention. He has always enjoyed helping people and encouraging people to be their best, but he wasn't trying to make me into a different person. If I wanted help with something, he was there for me, and has always been super duper supportive. He fell in love with me for me, and again offered his support with anything I wanted to change about myself for the better. I asked about the fixing thing because I admit that was something I tried doing in my last relationship, and I got majorly burned for it. I tried helping my ex get his crap together, get his HS diploma, get his debts paid, and be a better person. Instead, he yelled at me for nicely pushing him and fell back into drugs and became an abusive asshole. Screw that. I found out that she was married before, for a green card for him. She doesn't know that I know. Story time, man. That's a hell of a cliffhanger. I found joint tax returns and divorce papers. He's a gay guy living in Florida. I guess it's the thing to do down there to make some extra money. I'm not mad, but I wish he would just tell me. I was even like, is that a wedding ring? After looking at old pics. She denied. I guess she thinks it's old news and not worth talking about. I was the one hiding it from my SO. I was about as deep into addiction as you can get, but was putting on a very, if I must say so myself, convincing facade of normality. Wasn't until random crap started disappearing from the apartment that I couldn't really hide it anymore. That was a conversation that will live in the history books. Same here, but it wasn't until after we got married that I became an opiate addict. It took a while for her to notice, but as soon as she saw the bank account getting lower and lower, she did some investigating and figured it out. We're still together, and I have been clean for over a year. Hope all is well with you. Yeah, it took me a while, decades, to figure out I needed to stop being a dumbass and clean up my act. She stuck with me through it all. Been clean for over 8 years. Now it's just a matter of habit. A friend of a friend found out his now ex-fiancé had a ton of student debt she had no interest paying off, and she plans to be a full-time mommy. She eventually cheated on him with a personal trainer because he went to a strip club. Why be a student and get all of that debt if that's your plan? I've met more than a few people who go for the college experience rather than with a goal in mind. A lot of them drop out after a year or two, but I knew one guy who just kept changing majors so he could stay on campus. It took him 7 years as a full-time student to get his associates. I think he only finished then because he finally realized how creepy it was to be in his mid-20s partying with freshmen. My ex-husband revealed 2 years into our marriage that he didn't want kids, had never wanted kids, and had only told me he did because he knew I wouldn't have married him otherwise. This is true. We had talked about kids before even being engaged, so it's not like we hadn't discussed it on more than one occasion. I stuck around for another 2 years hoping to make it work, but ultimately decided the marriage wasn't worth saving. We had other issues in addition to that, but that was the big deal breaker for me. Luckily, I'm dating someone now who is absolutely amazing. It's like night and day compared to my first marriage. As someone child-free, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Both parties should be open and honest about their desire to have or not have children. It can cut your dating pool in half, but it's so worth it when you find someone who's as passionate about the issue as you are. I agree, my boyfriend's sister and BIL are happily child-free, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's what they both decided together. But to be lied to for that long really hurt for a while. My ex told me he didn't have a Facebook. About a year into dating, long distance, he was a suggested friend. It didn't bother me initially because it's possible he didn't use it or think it was important. Nope, he was very active with his real-life friends and family, some that I knew, and listed himself as single. When I told him about it, he didn't give me a reason why, just told me to deal with it. He didn't have a reason to go behind my back or hide me from his friends or family. It bothered me that the ones who knew of me went along with it. It felt like he was hiding something, but I never found out. That was the beginning of our spiral downwards. Being long distance was hard enough, but he kept giving me reasons to not trust him. We broke up a year after that, and boy, it was messy. If it makes you feel any better, my ex had a Facebook, but she wouldn't add me, and she was single on there. Seems pretty clear to me. Sounds like you were a side chick. Glad you got out of that mess. The year is 2015, and I had been dating my wife, then girlfriend, for about 5 years. I was surprised to learn she had not seen Tropic Thunder, so I instituted an emergency movie night. At the end of the movie, Tom Cruise dances to Get Back by Ludacris. Imagine my surprise when my wife begins to sing along to the music. Believe me when I say that my wife does not look or act like the kind of person who listens to, let alone memorizes, 2000s rap. I felt like I was sitting next to a stranger. I hid the fact that I owned my own house for a few weeks during the beginning stages until I really couldn't anymore. The last guy I dated said it was intimidating that I owned my own car at 23, so I didn't want to scare this one off by telling him I owned my own house at 25. He admitted later that it was intimidating. We're still together, so I guess it wasn't a huge deal. Do you mean to tell me you're a responsible, independent adult who can pay the bills? That's far more encouraging than it is intimidating, to me anyway. I was the SO hiding a secret. My now wife didn't know for the longest time that I didn't like soccer or football. When I first met her, she noticed that I came to class wearing 2 different soccer jerseys and thought I must have been a fan. They were both gifts from friends and fam who traveled overseas. She first approached me and tried to strike up a conversation about it. Whenever she brought it up, I tried to play it off like I watched a lot because that seemed to be one of the things that she liked about me. The charade was up one day when I didn't know what the World Cup was and that it was currently on. Still not a true-born fan, but I make a point of watching it with her when the World Cup is on and cheering for her team. His wife of 15 years and his new girlfriend. Quite the talented man. I can't even hide my favorite snacks from my girlfriend. How does anyone hide 2 relationships? Carefully. She doesn't like Star Wars. To be fair, she didn't know till I had her watch A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. She doesn't even want to watch Return of the Jedi. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar experience you'd like to share, please do so in the comments below. We'd love to hear about it. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and then stop by the channel to check out another amazing video. See you later!